welcome to the Misophonia podcast. This is season 6, episode 15. My name's Adil Ahmad, and I have Misophonia. This week I talked to Olivia, an art student in Australia. Olivia is relatively new to learning about misophonia, but of course she's had it for years. We talk about possible relations to OCD and autism, using ASMR for positive sounds, misophonia grief, having an alpha male dad, and a lot more. There is a content warning. Near the beginning of the episode, there is talk of child-on-child molestation. As always, let me know what you think. You can reach out by email at hello@misophoniapodcast.com or reach me on Instagram or Facebook at Misophonia Podcast. And as I always say, a great way to help the podcast is to leave a quick rating or review wherever you listen to the show. It helps us get up in the algorithms and reach more listeners. And thanks again for the ongoing support of our Patreon supporters. If you feel like contributing a little bit financially, you can read all about the various levels at patreon.com/Misophonia Podcast. All right, now here's my conversation with Olivia. Olivia, welcome to the podcast. Good to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me.
So yeah, I guess you signed up recently, and I was just looking at the bottom. It said like you just heard about misophonia recently, and actually first, do you want to tell us kind of where you are, what you kind of do in life?
Of course. So I'm actually in Australia, Sydney, and I am a uni student studying fine arts. And yeah, that's pretty much where I am, where I'm at. Yes, it's correct. I've only recently discovered the concept of misophonia and that I have it.
Okay, and so how did you become aware of the term misophonia?
So I literally wrote into Google, why can I not stand normal noises? And misophonia popped up.
So yeah, you Googled in why can't I stand normal noise? So you said normal noises, like a lot of times people put in like, the sounds of people eating, but you kind of left like a general normal noises.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah,
I think I might have said normal or everyday noises, and misophonia popped up. And as I was reading through it, I was like, no way, like,
yeah,
you're joking. And yeah, that's how I stumbled across it.
Well, and then you immediately knew that you were that this was. So let's quickly, I guess, go back. Like, how long have you known that something was going on?
Well, I always knew I had sensitivities to sound, but I always thought it was normal and a shared experience. So that's why I never looked into it. Like, looking back, some of my earliest memories are, the classic being in the car, and but I just thought everyone experienced it, and it wasn't until it was like truly really interfering with my studies and my work, and my mental health was just absolutely declining. I started like speaking out about it to my boyfriend and to one of my friends, and both of them went like, hey, I don't really know what you're talking about, but that doesn't sound like a fun time. And my world totally collapsed. I was like, what do you mean you don't know? Like, doesn't everyone go through this?
Yeah, it's an interesting realization there when we realize we're alone. First of all, it must be kind of like, oh my gosh, like, because everyone expresses some of these sounds as being an annoyance, but it's interesting that when we realize that we have it at a far greater level and nobody else very few people experience it at that level.
Yeah.
So you said you had classic trapped in a car kind of experiences, but what was that? Was it the first experience, or how, like, or was it like who were your first triggers? Was it your typical family situation?
Well, actually, after I did submit to come onto here, that's when I was like, okay, let me delve into a bit of my childhood, see if I can remember the first time. And I think I did figure out when it was. So it was even before like being trapped in the car and stuff. And it actually went to when I was maybe 7 years old. And I had a friend, and this is a bit of a trigger warning, but I did experience child on child molestation with this friend.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized, like, I always had to be very sensitive to the sound to make sure no one's coming or blah, blah,
Mm-hmm.
blah, things like that. And there was one night where she locked me in her bathroom and got me to do, the Bloody Mary thing where you say Bloody Mary in the mirror.
Yeah,
What?
right, right, right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, she got me to do that. And, I'm only like 7 years old. It was absolutely
Mm-hmm.
terrifying. And it was the middle of the night. And, anyways, when I finally was able to get out of the bathroom, her great grandmother was standing there, and she was I don't know if this is the proper term, but she couldn't speak, she couldn't hear, so she was also
Mm-hmm.
deaf,
Mm-hmm.
and she was a chain smoker, so she was breathing really raggedly, just standing there in the dark in front of the bathroom door.
That is
And
absolutely terrifying.
oh my god, it was a horror movie moment, and
Yeah.
that sound of her breathing, I cannot, like, express how much fear it filled me with, and I feel like it's ever since that experience in my life was when I really I became so sensitive to sound.
Wow. That is quite, yeah, quite definitely a formative moment. That's wow. I'm sorry you had to go through everything that kind of led up to that. Um, did you, oh, wow, okay. And then I guess did the trigger start to then apply to everybody else? Like was everybody's breathing and eating starting to bother you? Was it kind of like a, I don't know, like a light switch that went off, or did it gradually increase?
I'm actually not sure. I feel like it was a bit of both, like, everyone's breathing wasn't super triggering, but there was
Mm.
some like, for I guess it was the loud, ragged breaths, like, my like, snoring absolutely
Mhm.
started to mess with me, and, there were things like my dad, his eating sounds, um, and stuff like that. That was the start, and that's when it also crossed into being in the car, like, I would hear my dad chewing on gum because he was an avid gum chewer,
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
he'd be chewing gum or he'd be eating in the car or drinking, and I felt like I wanted to, like, claw my eardrums out. So yeah.
And after sorry to go back a little bit, like after the experiences with your friends, did you tell your family? Did you tell anybody what happened? I'm curious, because there's been some discussion in the community, at least where I am, on like the idea of unprocessed memories, unprocessed kind of traumatic memories, being a factor. I'm curious if you were sharing your experiences with anybody at the time, or if that was maybe later, and maybe you were just had all this stuff bottled up.
Yeah, it was definitely bottled up.
Hmm.
I think because, like, a lot of, I guess, survivors from this type of trauma do tend to say, like, they just know something's wrong. And that's what really happened to me. I knew something was wrong, but because I didn't understand what was happening and I kind of just went along with it, I felt like I had consented, even though I was 7 years old, and therefore, like, it was my fault that it happened. And so I didn't wanna tell anyone because I was like, I'm the one who's gonna get in trouble. So it wasn't until I was maybe like, around, like, maybe 13 years old, I spoke about it to my best friend, and because we were still, so young, we just kinda went like they're like, "No way that happened, like, that's so
Mm,
weird." And then when I hit around 15 and I had my first episode of depression and I was able to go to therapy, that was when I spoke up about it. And, yeah, so for a long time it was bottled up, but I'm 19 years old, I'll be 20 in December.
mhm,
But
mhm.
it wasn't until maybe, like, I was 17 or 18 that I really was able to, I guess, actually have that grace fall on me and say it wasn't my fault. But point being is that, yeah, no, all this time it's been with me, and I feel like, yeah, maybe that was an implication, and it it just helped the misophonia fester, but I don't know.
So, and were you until recently, until you found out misophonia had a name? Did you consider these things parallel, like your misophonia, and then everything else that was going on, like the depression and the aftermath of that experience? Were they kind of separate in your head?
Yeah, they were definitely separate.
Yeah.
It
Not that I want to say it, not that I'm necessarily connecting the two, but I'm just we're brainstorming here on the podcast and just kind
Yeah,
of
of
like
course.
thinking about um an interesting correlation, especially when you said that when you were when you were thinking about it, getting ready for this show, that you remember the I'll call her the creepy old lady, and being triggered by that. And did so you're maybe let's go maybe to your parents. As you're being triggered, what was the like sound triggered? What was the how are people reacting to? Well, how were you actually maybe acting out? Like you said, you want to rip your eardrums out, but how were you reacting, and how was your family reacting back?
Yeah, so I did the classic, like I tried to subtly cover my ears with my elbow resting on a table and muffling my ear, because I didn't have that experience where I felt like I could just cover my ears, which is
Hmm.
interesting because I was a young child, and I've heard people say, you're young, so like you don't know any better, you'll just cover your ears because it is irritating you. But I
Hmm.
remember it always doing it subtly, and yet no one ever knew. Like, now that I've tried to explain it to my parents and people around me, they kind of go, "But you were normal. Like, what do you mean this was happening?" Um,
Oh, so
and
they
they
didn't even really notice. You kind of
no,
really hit it.
yeah, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
100%. Like, I feel like it was so bottled up and, like, masked. So, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
everyone says they're like, "I have no idea," and it feels like people around me are still trying to understand, like, that it's my reality.
So was it since you found out I had a name, you've been really speaking up about it with people around you, or was it a couple of years ago? I forget now.
Yeah, no,
The
that's okay,
timeline.
no.
Yeah.
So, no, like, I never really spoke about I think it might be an Australian brand, but there's these earbuds called Loop earplugs.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Oh, love them. And I bought them like a year and a half ago or so because I saw them and I'm going, if you have noise sensitivities, and I was like, oh my God, I do. But again, because it's like, a lot of people are buying them, I thought it was again a shared experience, and it wasn't to the extent that I experienced. Um, but I bought the earbuds and no one really around me knew, and I still didn't realize, like, there were times when I was getting triggered, but I just plowed through it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't respect my own, I guess, like, sensitivities and irritation. Like, I just tried to, like, live with it. And so then it wasn't until it started getting so bad that I carried them around with me everywhere. I started using them more often and was like, huh, this is really helping. And after I spoke to my boyfriend and that friend, and they said, like, I don't think that's normal, I wrote a list of everything that I'm experiencing because there was other things that have been really popping up, like intrusive thoughts, um, and I've had this thing with always having to balance things out. It was getting really bad where I can't walk down the pavement, like, easily because I'm so concerned about stepping on the wrong colored tile or a crack.
Mm-hmm.
If I bump one side of my arm, I need to bump the other side until it feels right, all of these things. So I wrote a list, and I went to the doctor. He said it sounded like I was possibly on the autistic spectrum. But in the last 2 months, I've been working with a psychologist and I've been diagnosed with OCD. And so this is all so new. And there's been studies that show that misophonia links with OCD. So, yeah.
Definitely, it seems like it's around the same family, and there are research groups who investigate both of them. Um,
Mm,
and these traits, these kind of, well, I don't necessarily say traits, but these symptoms of OCD, like the balancing. um, carefully walking on sidewalks. Was that something that also just proliferated more and more recently, or is that something that you also saw at a younger age as well?
I always saw it at a young age
Hmm.
too, for sure. All of these things that I do, like, I remember, like, I would poke my sister in the back, I'm the youngest kid, so I'd, be annoying, poke her in the back with one hand, and then I'd feel so off balance, and I'd get super anxious, so I'd poke her with my other hand to balance it out, and then my sister will turn around and be like, "Oh my god, stop touching me," and I'm like, "I'm sorry, I just had to balance it out." Like, I knew I had these traits, but again, I thought it was normal. I didn't realize other people don't typically have it. It was just, I guess, it started getting so bad where, like in the past, yeah, like this past year, so, the last 9 months or so was when I found it got to a really big high, and um, yeah, like, I couldn't forget about it because there's some times where I wouldn't realize I stepped on a crack because I'm talking to a friend, or I didn't realize I hit my arm, so I don't have to balance it out, because I'm distracted, but it became where it's, like, taking up my whole day, and that's when I spoke up about it. So, yeah, it's interesting that it's always been there, but it only just recently, like, increased.
Would you say your family life growing up, your sister and your parents was pretty normal, relatively uneventful and stable and whatnot, or was there any other chaotic moments or kind of like tough conditions other than obviously the experience with your friend?
It was a bit normal, but of
Hmm.
course there were some things that came like my dad, he's a big trigger for me,
Hmm.
um, because he does like to be loud, he likes to be alpha male, and so I remember he would yell and, use vulgar language, when he was angry or we were in trouble because he said, like, he said, in order for you to remember and, to learn and to actually listen to me, I need to be loud and I need to,
Well, that
um
makes total sense. I'm just kidding. That's terrible. That's
I know, right?
that's
Don't worry,
terrifying. Yeah.
it was really scary. Like,
Mm.
he it's not I say scary, but I want to clarify that, he was never really, like, he I don't know how to express it. I wanna clarify that he's not, like, a bad parent, he just had the wrong tools and used them wrong, and so I was always so, like, absolutely, yeah, it really, just it was a big
Was
part of my
it?
upbringing.
Yeah, yeah. And was it often like like a would it often kind of maybe switch pretty drastically from very happy, well, normal, and then suddenly um something switched?
Yeah, yeah, it
Yeah,
was
yeah.
definitely like that, like, yeah, like, my dad can be the most sweetest, understanding dad in the world. He'll help me financially if I'm in stuck, or if,
Hmm.
like, if with things that he can, like, help with, I guess, in the sense of, like I said, money or needing things for school, like, or, when I first bought my car, like, he can help me with things like that. But when it came
Hmm.
to emotional things and my mental health and stuff, he was the dad who said, like, "You can just think positively and manifest it."
Yeah,
And,
snap out of it, and yeah.
yeah, and he's like, especially when I had my first, depressive episode, he's the dad who said, "It's just a switch, like, you need to flick it," and he's like, "You're not sad, happy, you manifest it, like, there's no reason to be sad," and that became my internal voice, and so when I went to therapy for the first time, I told them, "I feel like there's 2 sides of my brain, like, one side knows I'm not meant to be sad, and it's really frustrating because there's nothing to be sad about, like, I'm smart, but the other side just can't help it, and I no matter what, I just can't pick myself up." And they were like, "Olivia, do you realize that other side of your brain isn't actually a friend and it's a bit toxic? Like, it shouldn't be
Hmm.
yelling at you." So, yeah, it was a big, moment for me to have to unlearn all the things my dad said that I just didn't actually find useful.
Yeah. Has he has his tune changed at all, or is it it's, similar kind of uh tools, for lack of a better
Yeah.
word?
Pretty similar, to be honest. He came a bit more around, like, I saw him showing more emotion when his father, my grandfather, passed away, and, I remember, like, because I held him while he cried, and I was so blown away. I was like, "Oh my god, my dad's showing emotions, like, this is crazy." And when, my grandfather's brother passed away in England, I was the one who went with my dad and flew over there. I helped him write his eulogy, and he also, he was crying so much. He was the only person who cried giving his speech, and I went around walking with him in the graveyard, and I was like, "Oh my god, I'm teaching my dad it's okay to have emotions." Like, I put that on myself. So, yeah, it's been crazy.
Fascinating. Was he close to his dad? Just out of
Uh,
curiosity.
yes,
Okay.
very
Okay.
close.
Interesting. Okay. And well, actually, while we're on the topic, how was your? Do you know any? I don't know, any stories of your. What was your grandfather like, especially to your dad? Um, was he? Did you know your grandfather much?
Yeah, like, he passed away when I was, I think, maybe around 13. So
Hmm.
I remember, at least from my memories of him, he was very artistically inclined as well as, like, logically, which my dad is like. My dad's a logical, straightforward thinker, and but he's also pursues the fine arts like I do, and I got that from both of them. I love literature, I love mathematics, and I love fine arts. So I really bonded with both my dad and my grandfather, and they also had a bit of, like, a construction company together, like, they'd, do the plans for houses, and they loved, serving the community together, doing volunteer work and stuff, so they were really, really bonded in that aspect.
Gotcha. And how's your mom and your sister while you were going through a lot of this stuff as a
Yeah,
teenager, and still a
yeah.
teenager, but
Well, my sister, funnily enough, was the complete opposite to me, where I was known to be the drama queen and the crybaby. She was the one who was viewed as more emotionally in control because she'd control her emotions, but she was
mm,
actually bottling them up. And it got to a point where she's told me, in her teenager years, she'd go, "I want to cry, like, I feel sad, but I can't cry." And she'd try and force herself to cry to release, and she couldn't. Um, and I learnt that this is actually common with emotionally immature parents. I went after I talked to my new therapist about my dad, like, for one session, she told me to read this book called Emotionally Immature Parents, and she was saying kids, like, who have emotionally immature parents, usually one of them, or, like, usually you get one of the 2, where one either doesn't, like, expresses their emotions, doesn't know how to control it in that aspect, or one bottles us up bottles it up, and doesn't know how to control it in that aspect. So, yeah, it's fascinating.
yeah, absolutely. And what did yeah, and was there was your so obviously your sister was experiencing some of the same moments of anger or whatever that your dad was expressing. Was she getting the
Mhm.
same, basically suck it up, get over it, whatever she would go through?
Well, like, in regards if my dad would say that to her?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, well, she because she didn't really express the emotion in the first place,
Ah,
she was
okay.
actually praised. My dad would say, "Oh, you're so good. You're not crying at this, or you're not doing this, you're not."
Oh boy.
Like, she got the praise, and then I got the, like, reprimanding. So but we've both, like, grew up, and it was very toxic for the both of us.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Interesting. Um, and I guess, yeah, well, let's talk about maybe school. I mean, it sounds like you're obviously, doing quite well. Did it start to affect, you basically, yeah, being in school, being in class, or the kind of friends you hung out with?
Yeah, so the friends I hung out with were really, really down to earth, nice people, at least, like, in my last formative years, as the group, got smaller. And like my best friend, who's still my close friend to this day, he loves music. So we definitely, we always like listen to music. So again, I absolutely love music. I can't do anything on like the side of making it. I'm not musically inclined. I just really appreciate it. So in regards to like sound, we were very soft spoken, very grounding, which was super healthy for me. And so when there were the other people in my grade, which was really small, I graduated year 12 with like 40 people in my class.
Mm.
Um, and so if someone was being loud, they were heard, and there were so many people who wanted attention, of course. And it absolutely drove me up the wall. So I would like run away to the bathroom to like try and de-stimulate without really knowing it. I just knew I felt off and I wanted to go have a breather. Um, and there were times as well when working towards, we call it the HSC exams, like the, exams that see if you can go to uni.
Right.
Um, there were times where we'd be studying in class and it was like super quiet because if you talk, you get zero. And I'd hear the slight taps of the teacher's shoes walking in the room, and then she'd be like cleaning the whiteboard. I'd hear the spray and hear her wiping the board. And to me, it like was so nice. I felt like I had the tingles down my spine. I was gonna fall asleep. Like those sounds, I found like it like I didn't know why, but I just felt so good.
Mm. Interesting. So those were kind of positive kind of sounds.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I found that ASMR is a really nice outlet for me. Um,
Mm.
because before that, I thought ASMR was like quite weird. I thought it was only for like sexual purposes because of the like whispering and mouth sounds. But
Right.
when I started actually delving into it in like in my high school years, I found ones, without mouth sounds and specific sounds like I love, and it helped me fall asleep. As well as brown noise. I love the sound of brown noise. So yeah, those things I found in high school, and I'd be able to pop my like earphones in school and just listen to that. So I actually didn't find a lot of triggers at school for me.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. And this brown noise, well, it will be in the background of this podcast or this interview when it goes live, so people listening will hear that.
Yeah,
Just kind
I
of it
noticed.
just
I
kind of
love
masks. Yeah, it just kind of masks all those kind of. I cut out as much as I could, of any obvious triggers as we're talking. But then the brown noise is a good backup in the
No,
background.
100%.
It's also
I
good for people who are listening maybe to this on a bus or something, or out where or eating, and it's good to kind of like help be that kind of default. So
No, 100%. I love it. When I was listening to the podcast, I'm like, "Is that brown noise?"
oh yeah,
I was so happy. So,
yeah,
love.
the only podcast that has brown noise in the background. What about visual triggers too? Did that start to happen for you as well?
Definitely, definitely,
Hmm.
definitely. Again, I didn't really realize it, but 100%. And I think it might be linked a little bit to my OCD as well. Like, for example, when a teacher would sneeze into their hands, I would be absolutely beyond myself. And, I saw them, touching their thighs and then touching the papers and their laptop.
Yeah.
And like this happened to me even like 2 weeks ago at uni, and I put my earbuds in so I couldn't hear her sneezing, which was awesome, but I
Hmm.
could see her sneezing or like coughing, and was still losing my mind, so I had to close my eyes or look away, and I was like, "This is so annoying." Like, if I see something and it bothers me, I try and, like, close one eye to not see it, and this has been happening for a long time, where I'd, like, close an eye or I'd put my hand up to try and block something out of my vision, but I didn't realize it was weird or, like, unusual to do. So, yeah, I definitely know visual triggers are a thing for me.
Yeah. I mean, it's not unusual for us, but
Yeah,
but
exactly.
for
I guess
for
I mean,
others, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, that's interesting. Anything like touch on a trigger? Some people get, I don't know, triggered by certain sounds or sorry, or feelings like
Yeah.
uh, rumbling of some sort. I don't know, or bass going through walls.
Oh, me too. I definitely get that, and I try to explain it to people as, like, having unsafe and safe touches. Like, if I feel a bass in the car, like, my boyfriend, he loves to listen to hardstyle music and rap and all of that, but if he turns it up too loud, it not only, like, makes me panic from the noise, but the feeling of, like, the
Mm,
bass, it just, yeah, no, it, like, instills me with rage and also fear. But, I do also have the safe touches in the sense, like, if I accidentally scratched my, like, ring on a metal fridge when I'm, like, opening the fridge door, I would be so disgusted, and
yeah,
I had a hoodie on, I'd, like, scratch the hoodie because it's, like, a safe material, until I feel better. So,
that's interesting because that sounds like something I would do too. Huh?
yeah,
I never really noticed that. Okay.
I know, and apparently, like, when I told the doctor that when I first
I know
started,
what you mean by uncomfortable feelings for sure. Yeah,
yeah.
that what you described would definitely be one of those. Hmm.
Yeah, exactly, and it's so interesting because I know some people will go like, "Oh, that was an irritating feeling
Right,
or
right, right.
sound," but for us to have, like, a
I would be
safe
thinking about it for hours and days.
I know, exactly, so I have to, like, scratch a safe thing like a blanket or a hoodie or
Yeah.
something and it even happens in, shopping, like, in shopping markets, like, I went the other day and there I love ceramics and, like, those really nice bowls and plates, and
Mhm.
I felt one and it had an awful texture to it, like,
Yeah,
it was
yeah,
so gross, and I was like, "Huh," like, I felt so bad, so I had to go, like and I was, like, touching my boyfriend's shirt to, like, feel better. I feel a bit funny doing it, but it's the only way I can feel better, so
yeah. How do you, so, I mean, how does your boyfriend react to it? How did you tell him maybe in the first place? And um, how does he kinda deal with your condition?
yeah, well, honestly, he's been an absolute angel, thankfully, which is something I always admired in him. Like, straight off the bat, he's always been very accepting and supportive of my things, which was the complete opposite to, like, the other male in my life, my dad, who would put
Mhm.
down all of my experiences. But when I first he said he always kinda noticed I was more sensitive to, like, sound and stuff than others, but so when I explained it to him, like, that I have this, kinda condition, he totally, like he didn't think about it twice, and from now, like, if we're out in public and he hears a sound that he thinks is irritating or he knows, like, irritates me, he either gets out my earbuds for me or he'll, like, draw me into his chest and cover my ears like a K-drama
Mm.
moment, um, and it's so I find it really beautiful and, I definitely don't take it for granted, so he's been really, really good, and he's, also being eager to learn about things that trigger me so he can avoid it, or, like, if we're in the car and he really wants to listen to rap or something, like, he's getting tired and he needs something to boost him up to
Wake
try.
him up.
Yeah.
Right.
So he will just try and keep it down so the bass isn't too much, and
Y
he'll tell me to get the earbuds out, and if I ask him to turn it down a little bit, he will. So he's really respectful.
and so you said it sounds like you're using earbuds more. Are you using earbuds, like active, sounds in your ears now more than like the loop plugs or kind of earplugs, which just basically kind of diminish sounds?
Well, half and half. I
Mhm.
mainly use my loop earplugs because I find it's still good, so I can still talk to people, and having that reduction of sound, I feel like I can cope with that.
Mhm.
Um, so it is mainly the loop earplugs I go to, and I usually like, I can wear them for a whole day, like, at work, I'll just wear them for the whole shift, and people come up, and go, "Oh, I like your earring." I'm like, "Haha, thank you."
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I've been showing
Some of them
people
look quite good. Yeah.
well, they do, because I like to wear gold jewelry, so I have the gold loop
Uh-huh.
earplugs, so it looks like an earring, and, I've been showing it to people now and go, yeah, I have this because I have misophonia, and I'm trying to like educate people if they are interested.
Do you get any negative feedback on misophonia?
Thankfully, I haven't come across anything except for, of course, like
Your
I
dad?
guess my dad, and
Yeah.
my mum's quite supportive, but she just doesn't really again, she thinks I'm like she's like, "Olivia, you're normal, like, I don't understand that you have this thing," but, I think she's just confused, but yeah, like, they're the only people who are a bit, yeah, confused.
Hmm. Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's a hard thing for people to at least in 2022 for people to wrap their head around something that is sounds like a normal annoyance, but is on a far higher level.
Yeah,
Um, Interesting. And so what do you do? Yeah, what do you, I guess, what do you do for work? And I'm curious actually about, actually, yeah, maybe let's start with kind of, I'm always curious about art and creativity and how so many of us are in kind of creative fields. Have you
yeah.
ever, do you feel like, have you ever, I don't know, expressed anything about your misophonia through your art, intentionally or maybe even non-intentionally, but you thought about it afterwards?
Yes, I have actually. So this is a little bit of a fun thing. But to answer your first question, for work, I currently tutor kids, which can be a whole trigger on its own sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I also, well, I say kids, but they range from like 8 years old to 18. Um, and I also do retail as like I don't know if you know the brand, it's called Mecca, and they've been really supportive too because I ended up talking to my manager only a couple weeks ago about how my mental health is not really in the best place, and I want to make sure it doesn't affect my work performance because I'm very much on like, I'm always talking to customers, like, yeah, no matter where I am, I'm talking to people, and there's loud music going because it's a shopping center, all makeup and skincare, fragrance, like, it's a very busy environment, um,
Stimulating, very stimulating, yeah.
very, very stimulating, and so I told my store manager, and she was beyond supportive, which was so um, I'm so grateful for. She was like, "Even if there's days where you feel so overstimulated and, you can come in the back, you can take your apron off, and you can just do, like, organized stock and stuff." Um,
Yeah,
so, yeah, I'm very grateful.
very cool, okay. Yeah, that sounds great. Actually, I'm just curious, just to confirm, in school, you weren't really bothered. Did you ever ask for accommodations at any point, in school?
No, I didn't. I
Mm,
wanted to because there were times where, like, I'd be in the exam and someone would be chewing gum or someone will be tapping their pen or their foot, and even the visual trigger of people, like, shaking their leg, um, like, it drove me insane, but I just felt like I couldn't ask for help, and unfortunately here too, I think to get those amendments, you do need a lot of the paperwork and stuff.
so it's
Um,
kind of bit of, a lot more work to get accommodations in Australia.
Yeah, yeah, at
Okay,
least from what I know, like,
yeah,
you needed to get maybe, your doctor to approve it, and because I hadn't realized that sound and visual things trigger me, I knew it did, but I didn't realize it was, I guess, like, an actual thing. I never bothered to go look for that, and I just stuck through it.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. So coming back, then I guess, yeah, I'm curious to hear about art and kind of what you're doing for art and how you might be combining that with misophonia.
Yeah, so at the moment, I am just doing painting and, I'm still tossing up between ceramics and photography,
Mm,
um, but I wanted to go into sound production for a long time because I think the art of making sound is so beautiful and making ambiances and stuff, and I might even go into it in the future, but when I first delved into it, was when I was in high school, and, in for my last year, I did this class called Extension English 2, where you have to make a project, That's what the whole class is for. There's no studying. Like, I just have to make a project, whether it be like a poem or a short story or something like that, or even a short video. And I ended up making a storytelling like podcast episode.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And in that, I incorporated a lot of, like sounds, like ambient sounds. So, footsteps or, like crickets chirping, things like that. And I narrated it, and I had all of that noise. And because I was trying to speak about how powerful noise is with immersing and stuff. And it also led from an experience I had maybe a year prior, where I just have, I guess, small ear canals that can get blocked very easy.
Mm.
And I went on for like over a year where my ears were totally blocked up with earwax, which I didn't know at the
Mm.
time, but I knew it was blocked up. So I had kind of like a natural, I guess,
Earplug.
plug, yeah,
Yeah.
for the longest time.
It's
And
organic. So
yeah,
yeah.
literally. And I would tell people, because I did at the time, I struggled to hear people. A friend would whisper to me in class and I couldn't hear them, or the teacher was talking, I couldn't hear them properly. And it was a really, like, even a mental struggle. And I'd tell people and like my parents to try and get help, and they just kept disregarding it for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
And one day I came to my mom and like, "Mom, if I told you my eyes were like, my vision was blurry, you'd probably take me to the optometrist straight away. So when I'm telling you that I can't hear properly, why aren't we doing something? Like, it's really bothering me." So we finally went to an ear doctor, and he got all the earwax out, and like everything was like so crisp. Like, I like started crying instantly when I could hear things. And I remember like walking outside for the first time, and I like could hear the flutter of the birds flying above, and there
Mm-hmm.
was a water fountain there, and I heard it trickling, and someone spoke to me like on my left, and they were speaking to someone from my right. So it was like, I did a whole turn because I could hear people like 8D around me.
Yeah.
And so from that, I was like, wow, sound is so cool. And it's really, I guess it's quite important, or like it's just so beautiful. And that's what I really wanted to portray in that. And so I do want to now continue that journey with trying to capture sound. And now I have this misophonia aspect too, where it can not only be beautiful, but it can hurt people in a way.
Was the this podcast you said you doing some storytelling, were you trying to, were you had you written like a fictional story of some sort, or was it I would love to hear it first of all, but was it you narrating or describing sounds, maybe talking about sounds?
Well, it was like more of a narrative, like
Mm-hmm.
fiction story. If I can find it, I'll send it through. But it wasn't the original plan I wanted to go through. Unfortunately, I did have, my teacher was saying, "Oh, this probably won't get the best marks. Like, you need to change it this way and this way." So I moved
Uh-huh.
into something that, like, I'm still very proud of what I created, but it wasn't like what I wanted in the first place. So I hope to still create that original one I wanted to do one
Yeah.
day. But yeah.
No, I'd love to hear that. It's interesting. The obviously a lot of us are artists. The episode that's coming out actually this week, probably. I need to actually edit it after this, after my call with you. But it's with a composer, Marcelo, who he does a lot of avant-garde compositions, kind of like, think, like 20th century kind of John Cagey kind of stuff. Um, 12 tone, more abstract kind of music, but with piano and voice and whatnot. But he's got some pieces that are actually on YouTube, where he actually incorporated subtly some of his triggers in the compositions, which I think is
No.
fascinating, and it's quite beautiful. And in your paintings too, have you I don't know, tried to capture anything about, you know the feelings, or maybe what are the some of the themes in general of the stuff you're creating?
Well, I haven't really delved into misophonia yet,
Hmm.
but my biggest, I guess, release in painting is actually like grief. So I think it
Mm.
would be beautiful to like kind of get the grief of, feeling like, with this noise and being able to miss some moments and or like, I've heard stories on here which absolutely broke my heart how, it can ruin families or if
Oh
other
yeah.
relationships or even paths of life you want to go down. And like I'd love to capture that. But yeah, my paintings at the moment have been a lot of like yeah, remembrance of people I've loved who've passed or other people, like someone I will know would have a loved one pass away, and my like the way I grieve and I process it is to like paint. Um,
Hmm.
so that's kind of my ongoing theme at the moment. Um, but I do want to definitely like I have so many ideas of other like realms to explore as well. I love the body and femininity as well. I started a podcast called Heavenly Feminine, and it's all about, I guess, taking your power back as a female and learning from one another. Because just like you do on this Misophonia podcast, I think it's really a special thing to be able to share each other's stories, and I'm all about that. I love it. So that's
Yeah,
my
that's amazing. We should I'll definitely get the link to that podcast and link to it in the show notes. That sounds amazing.
yeah,
Um, And, yeah, those are, yeah, really interesting. I was gonna ask something about that. Oh, yeah, no, actually, I was gonna you so painting, obviously, and you'd also mentioned, ceramics and photography. Really
yeah.
curious. I'm also, like, actually, maybe a lot of people are, very interested in photography, almost wanted to produce pursue it at certain moments. What do you try to capture with photography? Do you have any things that are, kinda themes for you in photography?
Well, with photography, I've only had the chance to really capture, I guess, everyday life,
Mm.
stills like still life and just people I know or people in the street. But my ideal would be able to one day work in like a studio and do more of that. I actually don't know what it would be called, but you know how like I love the kind of weird photography. Like if a model is standing in a weird like position, like an unnatural stance. I think those are so
Mm.
beautiful, and
Mhm.
getting creative with that, like, I don't know, I can link my Pinterest board on the things I love.
Sure, sure, sure.
I yeah, I that's what I kind of like to capture with photography and with ceramics. Um, it's only at the moment I just feel like I think it's such a safe touch to me, like working with clay and stuff, and
Ah,
getting
interesting.
yeah,
Yeah.
and getting, like, kinda messy, I love that, like, whenever I paint, I love to be covered in paint by the end, like, it just brings
Mhm.
me so much excitement and pleasure, and, that's why I also love, yeah, like, sculpt making and stuff, so yeah, I haven't really delved with too many themes in that aspect, but that's why I'm so excited because I feel like it's just the beginning of my journey, and I'd love to be able to capture so many important messages through my art.
Yeah, that's amazing. I hope you do. Let's maybe kind of wind it down around that note, but I do want to just give you the chance to if there's anything else you want to share with people listening. I know you're relatively new to the concept of Misophonia and the Misophonia podcast in general, but I don't know, anything else you want to share with people? I know this is going to help a lot of people. Um, this conversation.
Yeah, thank you. I think the last thing I kinda like to say, which is also speaking to myself, would be to learn to give yourself grace and also respect yourself and the feelings you have. Like although feelings aren't always fact, if you're noticing you're feeling triggered, like respect that. Or if if anything comes on, learn to respect yourself and to give yourself that grace. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm learning that myself and trying to think of that more and more and tell other people to lead with self compassion. because a
100%.
lot of us, what I've heard over and over is, as I'm sure you've heard, a lot of us have had things in the past which were difficult, and we just never got over it, whether
Yeah,
we knew it or not. So, and then on top of that, we'd react with our misophonia. We get piled on with the shame and the step out of it thing. So I think we all deserve some self compassion and,
yeah, I do.
a little bit of, I don't want to say selfishness, but like, yeah, I mean, if you need to, if you need to react on, maybe just let your emotions come out one way or the other, and give yourself some grace, because um, we weren't really taught how to deal with this. So,
Exactly.
but yeah, Olivia, this has been amazing. Thanks for coming on, and yeah, I know this is going to help a lot of people.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you again, Olivia. If you like this episode, don't forget to leave a quick review or just hit the 5 stars wherever you listen to this podcast. You can hit me up by email at hello@misophoniapodcast.com, or go to the website, misophoniapodcast.com. It's even easier to send a message on Instagram at misophoniapodcast, and we're also on Facebook and Twitter, of course. Support the show by visiting the Patreon at patreon.com/misophoniapodcast. The music, as always, is by Moby. And until next week, wishing you peace and quiet.